but they have top-end talent like Colin Simmons, like Trey Moore, like Anthony Hill Jr., like Malik Muhammad, like Michael Taft, and they have depth as well. It's maybe the best defense in the country. I think he's going to be even better than he was last year, and what he was arguably the best freshman player of all time. He was the best player on a national championship team as a freshman. That is extremely impressive. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the CEO Sports Show. My name is Chris Kretschman. I am your host, and on today's video, we will be breaking down the Ohio State versus Texas Week 1 matchup. Before we get into the video, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe. I would greatly appreciate that. Without further ado, let's get into the video. Okay, so this game, to me, I think will be the hardest to break down all season, and here's the reason why I say that. Yes, there's going to be games later in the season where you say this is going to be a hard game to break down. But at the very least, you have certainty, right? You know about the play callers, the quarterback, the personnel that they have, right? In this game, I have a lot of questions about the quarterbacks on both sides. Obviously, the play callers with Ohio State, some of the personnel that they're going to be starting. Same thing with Texas when it comes to the personnel. Both of these teams are replacing a lot of players. They lost a lot of key pieces to their team from last year, and we'll see what happens in this game. So let's get into both of these teams. Let's start out with Ohio State. They have 9 returning starters. They're number 101 in returning production, 92nd in offensive returning production, 103rd in defensive returning production. Offensively, they return wide receiver Jeremiah Smith, wide receiver Carnell Tate, tight end Will Kazmarek, left guard Austin Searveld, center Carson Hinsman, right guard Tegra, I'm sorry if I butcher this name, Tisholbola. I definitely butchered that name. I apologize for that. Defense, they bring back arguably the best defensive player in the country with safety Caleb Downs, cornerback Davidson Igbinosun, linebacker Sonny Styles. They bring in the number 24 transfer portal ranking. When you talk about transfers like tight end Max Clare from Purdue, offensive tackle Ethan Owenwa from Rice, offensive tackle Philip Daniels from Minnesota, running back CJ Donaldson from West Virginia, and edge Bo Atkinson from North Carolina. They obviously lost a lot of players from last year's national championship team. Quarterback Will Howard, wide receiver Emeka Egbuka, running back Travion Henderson, running back Quinshon Judkins, offensive tackle Josh Simmons, offensive lineman Donovan Jackson, because he did go from guard to tackle, defensive tackle Tyleik Williams, edge Jack Sawyer, edge JT Tuimoloau, and there are plenty of names other than that. You know, I have to shrink the list to a certain extent, right? Their offensive overview for this year: Brian Hartline is the offensive coordinator, first-year offensive play caller for this Ohio State Buckeyes team. And after Chip Kelly departed, right, they gave the reins over to Brian Hartline. He's done an outstanding job coaching the wide receivers for this team ever since 2018, really, right? He was the interim wide receivers coach in 2018. That's when he became the wide receivers coach of this team. And ever since then, I think he's done an outstanding job coaching these receivers. I mean, you talk about Garrett Wilson, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Marvin Harrison Jr. I mean, there are so many names. Chris Olave. There are so many wide receivers that have made an impact, not just in college football, but in the NFL that Brian Hartline has coached up. Julian Sayin will be the starter for the Ohio State Buckeyes. He is a former 5-star recruit in the 2024 recruiting class. He started at Alabama, but ultimately decided to transfer to Ohio State. The recruiting scouting report from Greg Biggins from 24/7 Sports. He has a first-round projection on him, comparison to J.J. McCarthy, and wrote, quote, Sayin had a strong senior year and developed his game in multiple areas. Coming off an MVP performance at the Elite 11 finals, his confidence was sky high and it showed in his play. Physically, he looked more developed and stronger in his upper body. He always has had an advanced feel for the position with an extremely high football IQ. He's an accurate passer, poised, and understands timing and anticipation. His physical tools in terms of his size and arm strength took a jump this year, and he played with a lot more twitch in his game. His athleticism has always been an underrated part of his game, and this year we saw him take off and run more and showed the ability to easily elude pass rushers and extend plays. He's a heady player with a high football IQ and could be the most ready to play early quarterback in this year's class. The Ohio State Buckeyes, they have a running back room that has a 1-2 punch of sophomore James Peoples and West Virginia transfer C.J. Donaldson. James Peoples was a 4-star recruit in the 2024 class. He's listed at 5'10", 206 pounds. If you were to compare this running back room to the running back duo of last year, James Peoples is more in that Travion Henderson role compared to the Quinshon Judkins role, but he would fit that Henderson role. CJ Donaldson, a 4-star transfer coming from West Virginia, listed at 6'2", 231 pounds. He would be the Quinshon Judkins to James Peoples, Travion Henderson in that duo role, I guess you could say. But they're their own duo, right? They're not Henderson and Judkins. They're their own thing. So, obviously they're looking to make their mark that way. Ohio State has one of the very best wide receiver rooms in the country, if not the best, returning phenom Jeremiah Smith headlining this room. I don't believe that, obviously Jeremiah Smith, one of the best players in the country, but I don't think that people are taking into account what this guy is going to do in year 2. The Jeremiah Smith that we saw in the national playoff run, the national championship playoff run, is not the same Jeremiah Smith that we're going to see this season for the Ohio State Buckeyes. I think he's going to be even better than he was last year. And what he was arguably the best freshman player of all time. He was the best player on a national championship team as a freshman. That is extremely impressive. But we spend so much time talking about Jeremiah Smith, but we don't talk about the other names in the room, right? You got Carnell Tate, a guy who could potentially be a first-round pick this year, Brandon Ennis, Bryson Rogers, Mylan Graham, Quincy Porter. There's just so many weapons in that wide receiver room for the Ohio State Buckeyes. The Ohio State offensive line is interesting because they're looking to do like a rotation on their offensive line. And, their offensive line, they're very strong in the interior. You have Luke Montgomery at left guard. You have the center, Carson Hinsman, Tegra Teshobolia. I know that's probably not his last name, at right guard. And, when you look at the tackles for this Ohio State team, right, there's a lot more uncertainty there than you look at in the interior. When you talk about your redshirt sophomore, Austin Searveld, he's going to be playing left tackle. And then there's a position battle for right tackle with Ethan Owenwatt, the transfer from Rice, and Philip Daniels, the transfer from Minnesota. There are two guys that are battling it out right now for the right tackle spot for the Ohio State Buckeyes. They have an exceptional tight end room. So much so that Ryan Day said that this is the best tight end room that he has had in his time at Ohio State. That unit consists of Max Clare, Will Kazmarek, Christian Bennett, Jelani Thurman. Look for them to run more 12 and 13 personnel sets than they usually do. Adding Max Clare, that's big for this offense. He's one of the best tight ends in the country. He's going to give them another high-level passing weapon for Julian Sayin. And my overall thoughts on this Ohio State offense is that their offensive ceiling is going to come down to whether or not the offensive line plays at a high level and how good Julian Sayin is. If this offensive line is a good unit and, they play to the level that they have the potential to play to, they could have a great offense. And if Julian Sayin is good, you're talking about maybe the best offense in the entire country if that's the case, right? And I do think that Julian Sayin is going to be good. Let's not forget, this guy's a 5-star recruit. He went to Alabama, transferred from Alabama to Ohio State. He was a top 20 player in his class. He to me is going to be a very good quarterback for the Ohio State Buckeyes. I just think that there's uncertainty because he just hasn't had many reps on the field, right? But that doesn't mean that Julian Sayin can't, from day one, be a fantastic quarterback for Ohio State. As a matter of fact, in Biggins' write-up, his scouting report, he said he's the most ready-to-play quarterback in his recruiting class. So that's something that I think people need to pay attention to. The receivers are obviously a strength, right? Like I talked about, Smith, Mylan Green, Bryson Rodgers, Carnell Tate. That's going to be the identity of their offense. If they can hold up in pass protection, Julian Sang can get these guys the ball with the tight ends that they have, and they have a run game that can complement their passing attack, they could have an effective offense. I do have questions about Brian Hartline as the offensive play caller. I know he was a fantastic receivers coach, but there's difference between being a great position coach and being a great play caller. We'll see what Brian Hartline is. I have faith in the guy because, obviously he's done an outstanding job in the role that he has. So I think he can transition to offensive coordinator, but we'll have to wait and see on that one. When you look at this defense, their defensive play caller is Matt Patricia. When you look at just the personnel on this Ohio State team, their secondary is, that stands out. They're one of the best secondaries in the country, arguably the best. They have the best secondary player in the country with Caleb Downs. He is outstanding. Their defense as a whole, it's headlined by Caleb Downs. He's one of the best players in the country. He's played at a consistent high level at both Alabama and Ohio State in his 2-year career. When you look at the other safeties, they're going to look at guys like Jalen McLean or Malik Hartford to replace Lathan Ransom at strong safety. The corners are interesting as well with Davidson Igbinosun, sophomore Jermaine Matthews Jr., and starting at nickel is Lorenzo Styles. This is an elite unit. This secondary is outstanding. It might be the best in the country. Might be. Texas has a really good one as well. We'll talk about them. The defensive line is very interesting. The Buckeyes lost every one of their starting defensive linemen last year. And even though they lost all of their starters, it doesn't mean that they can't have a formidable unit, right? They do have some talent here. The unit has redshirt sophomore Caden McDonald, sophomore Edric Houston playing on the interior of this defensive line with some depth pieces in Tyrone Malone and Will Smith Jr. Tywin Malone. Will Smith Jr. Ohio State expects that these guys are going to play at a high level this year. And if they can, that's going to be huge for this defense. The edge where I think Ohio State can be very special when it comes to this defensive line is what they have on the edge, right? Kenyatta Jackson Jr. is a guy that a lot of people have high expectations for. Bo Atkinson, CJ Hicks, Logan George, Caden Curry. They're going to rotate in the edge spots, right? But, that unit as a whole, that defensive line, you may not know the names right now, but they could be a very good unit. The linebacker unit, it's very interesting as well. They have returning players like Sonny Styles and Arvell Reese, who will be starters for them. This is a duo that has the potential to be very good this year. And they have multiple guys to round out the room like, Peyton Pierce and John Pettijohn. So their defense as a whole, you might not know the names right now, but by the end of the season, I believe you will know the names. I believe this defense is going to be fantastic this upcoming season, but it may take some time to get the cohesion that they need to play at a high level because of the amount of new starters that they have, because of the fact that they have a new defensive coordinator. I think that is going to maybe hold them back at the beginning, but ultimately I think that this defense has the pieces, and I do believe in Matt Patricia enough to think that this defense could be an outstanding unit. The secondary is the unit that I just have the most confidence in when it comes to this defense. I can confidently say that they're an elite unit, but the linebackers are very good. I feel good about them. And, you talk about defensive line. They have potential. Matt Patricia, I will say, I do have my questions about him. I'm not a huge Matt Patricia fan, though. I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I think he could be very good for the Ohio State Buckeyes, but I just have my questions because outside of, him being with Belichick, it hasn't necessarily been great for Matt Patricia. But we'll see what happens. I have confidence in this unit, but I think it's just going to take some time to gel. Let's look at Texas and the overview I have for them. They have 9 returning starters. They're number 103 in returning production, number 126 in offensive returning production, and number 44 in defensive returning production. Offensively, their returning starters are Quintravian Wisner, wide receiver DeAndre Moore Jr., right guard DJ Campbell. Defensively, they're bringing back Anthony Hill Jr., Leona LeFou, Trey Moore, Jalen Gilbo. I'm sorry, some of these last names I'm just not very good with. Cornerback Malik Muhammad, Michael Taff, the safety. They ranked number 23 in transfer portal rankings. Their transfers are Murad Watson, Travis Shaw from North Carolina, Cole Brevard from Purdue, tight end Jack Endries from California. Their key losses are quarterback Quinn Ewers, offensive tackle Kelvin Banks Jr., cornerback Jade Barron, wide receiver Matthew Golden, defensive tackle Alfred Collins, safety Andrew Makuba, tight end Gunnar Helm, running back Jadon Blue. There's so many players to even list off. Cameron Williams is a guy that they lost to the NFL as well. And so many players that they lost. Just like Ohio State, it's not a one-way road in this preview. Both of these teams lost a lot of players to the NFL. And I have to address that. Their offensive play caller is Steve Sarkisian, one of the best play callers in the country. The headliner for this offense, it's obviously Arch Manning. He has been the main story this offseason. He's been the number one story in college football just as a whole, not just for the Texas Longhorns or the SEC. I believe the ceiling of this football team and offense rises to an extremely high level if Arch Manning is as great as people say he can be. I don't believe he's this Andrew Luck type of guy, because if he was, I think we would have known by now. But do I think Arch Manning can be very good to great and potentially be a Heisman candidate with the schedule that they have, with some of the spots that he's going to be put in to be able to put on a really good case for his Heisman resume? I think that, yes, he could potentially do that. Manning last season threw for 939 yards, 9 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions, but a lot of his playing time came from Mississippi State, University of Texas San Antonio, and University of Louisiana Monroe. So not necessarily outstanding programs. The Longhorns will have 4 new starting offensive linemen, with DJ Campbell, their right guard, being the only returning starter. At left tackle, redshirt sophomore Trevor Gooseby will be the starter. He started 2 games and appeared in 8 games for Texas in 2024. PFF gave him an overall grade of 62.7 with a pass blocking grade of 80.8 and a run blocking grade of 61.3. At left guard, redshirt junior Neto Umazula will be the starter. He appeared in 5 games in 2024. He was a 4-star recruit in the class of 2024, and he's going to get a shot to be a full-time starter for the Longhorns this season. At center, senior Cole Hudson will get the nod. He played all across the line for the Longhorns over the past few years, and he finally gets a chance to be a full-time starter for the first time since his true freshman season, where he started at guard. At right guard is returning senior DJ Campbell. He started for the Longhorns in 30 games over the past 2 seasons. At right tackle, sophomore Brandon Baker will get a chance to start. He was a 4-star recruit in the 2024 class, and this was his scouting report by Greg Biggins of 24/7 Sports. Quote, Baker is on the short list when talking about the nation's top offensive tackle prospect. He had a strong senior year for the state's top team and earned several postseason honors. He has been a full-time starter at right tackle since his sophomore year and has played some guard as well. And at the next level, we think he has the feet and balance to play on the left side. At 6'5", 290 pounds with a 83-inch wingspan, he has a prototype tackle frame and plenty of room to add good weight. He's very technical in how he plays. He's not a mauler or the kind of lineman who's going to grind you into the ground, but he's more of a technician. He's advanced as a pass protector and an effective run blocker as well. He's a smart kid and knows how to play the game, and has always shown a consistent motor and a strong off-the-field work ethic to match. He has a projection of a Power 4 starter. The running back room is very good for the Longhorns. Both Quintavian Wisner and CJ Baxter are in this room. Baxter tore his LCL and his PCL last year, so hopefully he can come back for the Longhorns and have a great season like I know he's capable of having. The run game is big in the Sarkisian offense. Is like they like to complement the passing attack with the run game, and they like to build play action off that. So, they've had a really good running back for a few years here, Texas, a really good running back room. I mean, you can go back to last year when you talk about, some of the pieces that they had along with Jadon Blue. The year before that, Jonathan Brooks unfortunately tore his ACL, but they had guys like Bijan Robinson, Roshan Johnson. They have had really good running backs over the past few years here. The wide receiver room for Texas is young, but has a lot of potential. The Longhorns return junior DeAndre Moore Jr. and the former 5-star recruit sophomore Ryan Wingo. They look for guys like Stanford sophomore transfer Emmett Mosley the fifth and redshirt freshman Parker Livingstone to step up and be productive for this offense. They also added tight end Jack Endries from California to help them with their pass catching unit, with returning players like Spencer Shannon and sophomore Jordan Washington. My overall thoughts for Texas's offense is that what really worries me about this offense is the inexperience of the offensive line. I think Arch Manning is going to be a very good quarterback, but his ceiling won't be met unless this offensive line plays at a really high level. And especially with the fronts that they're going to be playing in the SEC, that could potentially be a problem. The running back room is absolutely a reason to be optimistic about this offense. They are one of the best in the country, and Sarkisian loves having that at his disposal. And, with the way he calls offense, like I said, he likes to build that play action. Having a strong run game, it makes it much easier to do that. The pass catchers will be good enough for them to move the ball, but there is absolutely some uncertainty with some of the wide receivers in that room. We'll see if Ryan Wingo can be the player that people thought he could potentially be. Granted, it was just his freshman year, true freshman year last year. So we'll see what happens there. But, the key to this offense is Arch Manning playing well. And if he can do that, not only just Arch Manning playing well, but the offensive line as a whole. And if he can do that and the offensive line can play well, I think that everything will fall into place for the Texas Longhorns. Their defensive play caller, when we look at their defense, Pete Witkowski, a lot of difficult last names to pronounce here. The defensive line for Texas is outstanding. You talk about edge defenders like Colin Simmons, Ethan Burke, Trey Moore, along with interior defensive linemen like Travis Shaw and Cole Brevard, most likely starting in the interior there, two gigantic human beings, along with depth pieces like Hiro Kano, Justice Terry, and Myron Charles. The linebackers for Texas are outstanding. They're returning Anthony Hill Jr., who is one of the best players in the country, along with Liana Lefau, Arkansas transfer Brad Spence, and highly touted freshman Elijah Barnes. The Texas secondary is outstanding, with pieces like Malik Muhammad and Michael Taff being the elite players that they are, but they also have some really good pieces around them, like Jalen Gilbo, moving from the slot to the outside. They're moving Jelani McDonald to the slot alongside Kobe Black, Cade Phillips, and Grayson Littleton. There's so much talent in this unit, and it could be one of the best in the country. This Texas defense is outstanding. They have so many units on this defense that are really good, but they have top-end talent like Colin Simmons, like Trey Moore, like Anthony Hill Jr., like Malik Muhammad, like Michael Taff, and they have depth as well. It's maybe the best defense in the country. And I think this defensive line, I think it's going to be outstanding. It might be the weakest unit on this entire defense. And that's not a slight against the defensive line. That's just saying the units around the defensive line are so damn good that, a really good unit like their defensive line could potentially get lost in the shuffle. Now, they got to hope that these transfers play as well as they think they're going to play. And that's mainly the reason why I think I would say that is the weakness of their defense, even though it's not a weakness. It's just out of the three units that, you look at, defensive line, linebacker, secondary, it's just out of those outstanding units, they're the least outstanding of the three, in my personal opinion, just because of the uncertainty with the defensive tackles and how they're going to transition to the Texas defense. So prediction time for this game. This is a hard one to call. Extremely difficult matchup to call. I think that this is going to be the most difficult all season. And I think that there are multiple matchups within this game where it's like, okay, this needs to go one way or the other. But the one that I think needs to go one way for one team is this offensive line of Ohio State being able to protect against Texas's defensive line. If they're able to do that, I understand Texas, they have an outstanding secondary. Jeremiah Smith might be the best player college football ever sees, right? You have a wide receiver room with not just Jeremiah Smith, but Carnell Tate, Mylan Graham, Bryson Rogers, all these other guys that can make plays, Brandon Ennis. Like, they have so many pieces in that wide receiver room that if they can protect and they allow Julian Sayin to get the football at his playmakers, that to me is going to be ultimately the difference in the game. And, you know, you talk about not just the offensive and defensive lineup matchup for Ohio State's offensive line and Texas's defensive line. I want to see this Ohio State defensive line against Texas's offensive line. Both of these units have new starters on both sides of the ball, right? Ohio State is starting an entirely new unit. Texas is starting damn near an entirely new unit outside of one player, DJ Campbell, right? Like, so it's something that I'm really looking forward to. I am very uncertain who's going to win that matchup. But I do believe that ultimately, because of how great the two pieces are on Ohio State and the fact that I don't think Texas has players that are on that caliber of player. Colin Simmons is an outstanding player. Do I think he's Caleb Downs or Jeremiah Smith? Respectfully, I don't think that. And I think that Jeremiah Smith in year 2 is going to be even better than he was in year 1. Like, what we saw from him was true freshman Jeremiah Smith. Now we see him as a sophomore. What type of leap does he take, and what does that look like? And how much pressure is that going to put on opposing defenses? And at first, when I was going into this study, I looked at this and I said, hey, you know, Texas will be able to run the ball more effectively than Ohio State. And because of that, I think that's going to be enough for Texas to get this win. But when I really start to look at this even more, like when it comes to Texas's wide receiver room, I don't love that room. I think they have a pretty good room. I don't think it's to the level of Ohio State, and they have an experience on their offensive line. Texas does. Ohio State, they have more experience on their offensive line. They've seen this Texas front before. And not only that, when you talk about the receivers that Ohio State has, I think it's going to be a lot easier for Julian Sayin to be able to have success in this game than Arch Manning, knowing the fact that, again, offensive line that hasn't really played together that much, a wide receiver room that is not as good as Ohio State, and playing on the road in Columbus. I think that those are multiple factors to me that makes me say, okay, I think that Ohio State is going to be able to do enough to be able to put enough points on the board to win this game. And I think it's spearheaded by the fact that they're going to have a run game that complements this pass game, right? Like when you look at Texas and what they're going to have to do to account for these receivers against Ohio State, yeah, maybe Texas has better running backs than Ohio State. But I think the one thing that we're not taking into consideration is the looks that Ohio State is going to get because of the pressure that these wide receivers are going to put on that Texas defense. And I think because of that, Ohio State is going to have enough success on the ground to be able to get into play action, to be able to balance out their offense, to be able to take pressure off Julian Sayin. And that's where the deep dive really comes into, which makes me say, I think Ohio State is going to win this game. They're a favorite in this game. They're at home. I think that the pieces that they have are just, they're next level. And again, I'm not taking anything away from Texas's pieces, but I just don't think they have guys that are as good as Jeremiah Smith and Caleb Downs. So because of that, I'm going to pick Ohio State to win this game. It's going to be a close one. I got it 28-24, Ohio State in a barn burner. It's going to be a fantastic game. So that is going to be it for the video. If you guys enjoyed the video, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. We are growing this channel and your support is much appreciated. But until the next video, I will see you guys later.